بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فإن أحسن الكلام كلام الله وخير الهدى هدى محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وإن شر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. Today we're looking at chapter 31 from Kitab-ut-Tawheed, and this chapter is titled Bab قول الله تعالى ومن الناس من يتخذ من دون الله أندادا يحبونهم كحب الله. Chapter concerning the statement of Allah the Most High, and amongst mankind are those who take for worship those besides Allah as partners and as rivals to Allah, and they love them as they should love Allah. They love them as they should love Allah. So this chapter then is obviously concerning the issue of mahabba and love, and its position as relates to the affairs of Tawheed. So the Shaykh Salih al-Fawzan comments upon this opening chapter title, and so he says that the Shaykh, rahimah-ullah, he desired by way of this chapter to explain that mahabba, love, is one of the types of worship, and that anyone who loves anyone besides Allah, then he has associated partners with Allah, with the major shirk which expels from the religion. And this, what is being referred to here, is the condition and the state that the mushrikun, that the pagans were upon, those about whom Allah said, وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يَتَّخِذُ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ أَنْدَادًا يُحِبُّونَهُمْ كَحُبِّ اللَّهِ, that amongst mankind are those who take for worship or who take as rivals with Allah those besides Him, and they love them as they should only love Allah. And when mahabba, when this love is from the types of worship, in fact it's from the greatest of the types of worship, then anyone who loves someone alongside Allah, someone who loves Allah and then loves someone alongside Him as well, then this person is a mushrik with the major shirk. And since this is the reality and this is the case, then it was appropriate that the Shaykh, that the author, the Shaykh rahimah-ullah, that he mention this chapter in Kitab-ut-Tawheed, so that he may that he may bring awareness to this important issue. So mahabba, love, as the scholars have mentioned, is divided into two types. The first type is what is called as the mahabbatul-ubudiyya, the love of servitude. Right? The love of servitude, the love which actually constitutes worship. And with respect to this, it's obligatory that it be purely and sincerely for Allah alone. And the mahabbatul-ubudiyya, the love of servitude, is such that that alongside it there is present what is called dhullun lil mahbub, which is a kind of subservience and humility to the one that is loved. So this is what distinguishes this type of worship from the other types of worship, in the sense that the love of servitude or the love of worship is the one which has along with it a subservience and humility in front of the one, or to the one that is the object of one's love. Right? And this is what makes it the mahabba of al-ubudiyya. And with respect to this, it's not permissible to direct it to anyone besides Allah. Just in the same way as it's not permissible to prostrate to anyone besides Allah, or to sacrifice to anyone besides Allah, or to make an oath to anyone besides Allah, then similarly, although those are outward actions, then similarly with respect to the love of Allah, then loving other than Allah in this manner with the love of servitude, which is obviously which is accompanied with humility and servitude and obedience to the one who is the beloved, then it is not permissible to direct that to anyone besides Allah. Rather, this is the right of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. And then the Shaykh says that for this reason Ibn al-Qayyim, al-Allamah Ibn al-Qayyim rahimah-ullah, he said in his well-known poetry, compilation of poetry called An-Nuniyya, and then the Shaykh brings a few lines of poetry which the meaning, or the general meaning, which is that the worship of Ar-Rahman, consists of the extremity of love alongside the subservience and the humility of the worshipper. And they are two pillars, they are two poles. And basically, that ibadah, that therefore ibadah revolves around this, and it will not, ibadah will not be present unless these two pillars or poles are established, and that the central core, or that the revolving point of this ibadah is by the command of the messenger, by Allah's messenger, and not by one's desire and soul and shaitan, meaning whatever emanates from the soul or from one's desire or from shaitan. So this shows that this particular form of ibadah that we're talking about, or this love that we're talking about, which is ibadah, then it is the love of ibadah, because it has with it the subservience and the humility directed to the one to whom love is being shown, as opposed to the other forms and types of love that we will see in a short while, inshallah ta'ala. So the scholars then say, summarizing, that the scholars say in definition of ibadah that it is ghayatul dhul ma'a ghayatil hubb, the extremity of humility and subservience alongside the extremity of love. And this ibadah, as we know, is something which revolves around three things: upon mahabba, love, and upon fear, khawf, and upon ar-raja, which is hope. And mahabba and khawf and ar-raja, they are the pillars of ibadah and the foundations of them, or foundations of it. And when the three come together, then ibadah is established and actualized, and it will then bring benefit, such as like in the affairs of salah and al-hajj and all of the various other types of worship. And as for when one of these three affairs are absent, then a person, even though he might fast and he might pray and he might perform pilgrimage, then it would not be considered correct worship in that regard, meaning when any one of these three are absent: mahabba, khawf, and ar-raja. And that's why the scholars said, as the Shaykh says, man abada Allah bil mahabbati faqat fahuwa sufi, that anyone who worships Allah with love alone, then he is a Sufi. Because the Sufiya, they claim that they worship Allah because they love Him alone. And they say, we don't worship Allah because we fear His fire, or because or that we hope in His paradise. Rather, we only worship Him because we love Him. And this is misguidance, as the Shaykh says. And the Shaykh continues and he says, meaning from the statement of the scholars, وَمَنْ أَبَدَ اللَّهَ بِالرَّجَاءِ فَقَطْ فَهُوَ مُرْجِي, that anyone who worships out of hope alone, then he is a murji. Because the murji'ah, they expel actions from the essence of iman. And then he says that they say, وَمَنْ أَبَدَ اللَّهَ بِالْخَوْفِ فَقَطْ فَهُوَ خَارِجِي, that whoever worships Allah out of fear alone, then he is a khariji. Because the Khawarij, they declare believers to be disbelievers on account of the sins that they commit. So the Murji'ah, they took the aspect of ar-raja only, and the Sufiya took the aspect of muhabba only, and the Khawarij took the aspect of khawf, fear only. As for Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, then they combine between the three affairs, and all praise is due to Allah, and muhabba, so they bring muhabba along with fear and hope, and al-dhul, which is subservience, al-inqiyad, which is compliance, and al-ta'ah, which is obedience. So they bring all of these three things together, and upon these foundations, meaning the foundations of love, fear and hope and compliance and obedience and subservience, then they build all of the remaining types of worship upon that. Those other remaining types of worship which bring one close to Allah and which bring one near to Allah, and meaning that in all of the various forms and types of worship like prayer and fasting and hajj and all of the types of worship, that underlying them all, the believer, underlying them all, that he brings all of these affairs, the foundations of worship, which is muhabba, khawf and ar-raja, alongside the other affairs. And this is how it is with Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah. So that's the first type, muhabbatul ubudiyya, the love of worship. And we can see that the love of worship is an extremity of love combined with an extremity of dhul, which is subservience and humility, and humbling oneself to the one that is being loved and obeying the one that is being loved. And as for the second type, which is it is the mahabba, which is not the mahabba of ubudiyya, meaning it is not the love of worship, or which constitutes worship. And this itself is of 4 different types. The first type is the mahabba of something which is natural, mahabbatun tabi'iyya, a natural type of love. Like for example, when a person, he loves food and he loves drink and he loves those things which, those permissible forms of pleasure, like for example, the marriage, like one spouse, and the other things of pleasure that a person may attain lawfully. Then this is the first type, mahabbatun tabi'iyya, the natural type of love. The second type of love is what is called mahabbatu ijlal. Mahabbatu ijlal. And this is called the love of honor, the love of honoring. The love of honoring. This is like, for example, when a son, he loves his father, who is other than a mushrik or a kafir, and he loves him in a manner which implies, which signifies a respect and honor and ennobling him. And this is because his father is the one who nurtured him and who brought him up, and so on and so forth. And for this reason, this person feels a natural type of love towards his father or his parents. So that's the second type of love. The third type of love is a love which has within it a type of mercy. So if you like, it's like a type of compassion. A love which has within it a type of compassion. And this is what you see when a father or when a parent shows it to his or her offspring. So the father, he loves his offspring, and he does so with a love which has some kind of mercy or compassion within it. That's the third type of love. And the fourth type of love is just a type of love where a love of companionship, where you have a companion, an associate, maybe because they work with you in your work, or a partnership in business, or whatever it is, and just because of that company, you like to have that kind of company. And again, this is something natural, and this again is a type of love which is permissible, and it wouldn't constitute the type of worship which is the worship of the worship. It wouldn't constitute love which is worship. So the Shaykh says that these 4 types are not to be considered worship. They're not to be considered worship, and the reason is because these types of love, they don't have along with them that type of humility and subservience and obedience, and for that reason they're not considered to be the love of worship. So just to summarize then, we're looking at here the issue of love, and love is a form and type of worship which should only be directed to Allah, but we need to distinguish and clarify between what love is the type of love which is worship, and what love is not the love which is worship. So the love which is worship, we said that love becomes worship when you couple it with this type of obedience and subservience and humility to the one to whom you show your love. Right? So when it has humility and subservience and obedience and so on and so forth, then that's what becomes the love of worship. And as for when this humility and obedience and subservience is absent, and it's just love on its own, and it's either a love towards those things that a person naturally is inclined to, like food and drink, and those things which are legitimate means of pleasure and so on and so forth, or whether it's, for example, the love that's shown between parents and the offspring, and offspring to the parents, whether it's the love of honoring, which occurs from offspring to the parents, or whether it's the love of compassion, which is shown from the parents to the children, or whether it's just the love of company, which a person has towards one's friends and whatever, then all of these types are not to be considered worship. So there's nothing wrong with these, they're natural and they're fine. And the issue really is the first type of love, which is the love where, coupled with it is this humility and subservience and obedience to the one whom one loves. That then would be considered worship, and that worship, as we said, that form of love can only be directed to Allah the Most High. And so then Shaykh goes on to bring a verse, and in this verse from the Quran, Allah says, وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يَتَّخِذُ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ أَنْدَادًا, which means that amongst mankind, amongst the people, are those who set up rivals. They set up rivals alongside Allah. So this means obviously referring to those who worship others alongside Allah, like the mushriks, like the pagans, and they set up rivals. Right? They set up rivals. Rivals meaning those who resemble or who equal, or they try to make them equal to Allah, in the sense that they direct forms of worship to them, and they try to equate between them and between Allah, and so therefore they've been called rivals. Right? So in the belief of those who worship other than Allah, then they make them rivals or equals, and it's in their belief, they believe that they are equal with Allah, and hence that's why they why they worship them. So then in the verse it continues to describe one of their characteristics, which is, Allah says, يُحِبُّونَهُمْ كَحُبِّ اللَّهِ, meaning that they love them, they love those that they worship with a love that should only be for Allah. So meaning that these things that they worship, whatever these objects are that they worship, that they love them in a manner, and they love them in a manner which is the love of worship. So if you remember, the love of worship is something which is not just love in itself, but it's coupled with humility, subservience and obedience to the object of one's love. So therefore these people, when they worship, for example, these statues, or it could be idols, or it could be anything, you find that it's not just love on its own, but you find it's actually a love which has within it this humility and compliance and submission and obedience, and it has with it all of these things. And so therefore these individuals or these people, when they worship these idols in this manner, or these statues, or whatever else it might be, it could be individuals, it could be idols, it could be statues, and they direct this love, and this love which has within it this obedience and humility and subservience and everything else, then what they've done is that they've shared, or they've set up partners and rivals with Allah in one of the greatest forms of worship, in one of the greatest forms and types of worship, because love is one of the greatest forms and types of worship. It's a worship of the heart, it's internal, and it's one of the greatest forms of worship. So therefore, these individuals, or these people who are being referred to in this verse, basically their characteristic is that they love Allah. It's not that they don't love Allah, they love Allah, they worship Allah, but at the same time, even though they acknowledge His Lordship and the fact that He created them, they love Him, no doubt, but at the same time, they didn't single out Allah with this love. Rather, they directed this love to other than Allah as well, meaning this love which has with it the humility and the subservience and so on and so forth. So basically, they didn't single out Allah, they directed this love to other than Him, to the idols and to the statues, and for this reason, they set up partners with Allah in worship.